Hello and welcome to a video on biochemistry and nutrition. Today we'll talk about keto diet and what is the scientific basis behind it. So keto diet is one kind of diet composition which would be majorly fat, very low in protein and carbohydrate. Fat would comprise 70 to 80% of that diet. There would be 20 to 25% protein and 5 to 10% would be carbohydrate. Now we can get our calories from three sources, namely carbohydrate, protein or fat. Both carbohydrate and protein has kind of 4 to 5 kilocalories per gram of calorific value, whereas fat has way more than that. Even though fat has much more calorific value, our body is not trained to utilize fat. It turns out that our body always prefers to utilize carbohydrate in order to generate energy. So body prefers glucose over fatty acids. And brain needs glucose for its functioning. And even under starved state where brain cannot stop functioning, brain needs the steady supply of glucose in order to function. And fatty acid at that moment of time cannot be utilized by the brain because it cannot reach the brain and cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. So here is the catch. Imagine this glucose is like the steady fuel of a particular bike. Now, once the steady fuel is over, then it can run on reserve fuel, and this reserve fuel in context of brain or body is basically ketone bodies. Actually, our brain can utilize ketone bodies, and ketone bodies can cross blood-brain barrier. So when glucose is not present, such as when we are starving, brain can run on keto fuel, and this is how our brain keeps on going. In short, ketone bodies are like the reserve fuel for the brain. Now the question is how our body starts to utilize fat in order to generate energy. Because in keto diet, we are consuming a hell lot of fat. The question is how our body is getting adapted to this situation. Now ketogenesis can intrinsically happen when we are starving for a long term. Let's try to understand this aspect. So when we are starving for long, our liver produces acetoacetate, acetone or beta-hydroxybutyric acid. All of these are ketone bodies. Now, when we are starving for long, what really happens is our body produces ketone body, or it's kind of like a ketogenesis state. And in keto diet, we are forcing our body or training our body to create ketone bodies. Generally, under normal circumstances, body don't produce ketone bodies. But utilizing the keto diet paradigm, we are training our body and telling the body to break down fat and make ketone bodies out of it. And that is why it's really important. Now, the biggest question is, can keto diet lead to weight loss? And this is the biggest question people have in their minds. And it turns out there is a scientific basis behind it. Little bit complicated, but it's important to understand. So let's say we are pretty slim at this moment, but we consume a lot of carbohydrates, cheesy food. So what really happens is all of these carbohydrate based food would lead to production of energy. Now it all boils down to calorie in versus calorie out. Let's say our calorie input is too much, but we don't really spend that calorie or we don't work out that much due to our sedentary lifestyle. So what really happens is glucose gets converted to acetyl-CoA. Initially that would be channeled into Krebs cycle to generate energy. But this ATP generation or energy generation is kind of demand based. So when the body's demand for ATP is totally done, body would not produce any more ATPs because it would be kind of like a waste, right? So obviously Krebs cycle would not happen and the acetyl-CoA would be channeled into production for fatty acid. So fatty acid biosynthesis would be favored under these kind of circumstances when glucose level is pretty high in a well-fed state. And the excess of fatty acid would ultimately be deposited on the adipose tissues, and the end result is you would become fat. Now let's see what keto diet does. But before that, let's understand one hormonal regulation in terms of keto diet. So when we take normal diet, which is enriched in glucose, then acetyl-CoA carboxylase, an enzyme which is key for fatty acid biosynthesis, gets activated. Acetyl-CoA converts into malonyl-CoA, and that can give rise to fatty acid synthesis. Actually, this particular rate-limiting enzyme exists in an inactive state or an active state, and it can be converted from its inactive to active state with the help of an phosphatase enzyme. And when glucose level is high, insulin level is also high, and insulin triggers this phosphatase enzyme, ultimately augmenting the process of fatty acid biosynthesis. So overall, what really happens that when insulin is there and body is under well-fed state and too much of blood glucose is there, body converts majority of that blood glucose into kind of like a fatty acid, and it would be deposited. But under keto diet, when the glucose input is really low, acetyl-CoA cannot be produced from the glucose because at the first place glucose level is low, right? So acetyl-CoA production happens by breaking down of the fatty acid. So fatty acid gets oxidized to acetyl-CoA, and this acetyl-CoA is not channeled into fatty acid biosynthesis pathway. Rather, it is channeled into ketone body generation, because in absence of glucose, ketone is the reserve fuel for our body and the brain. That is why our body starts breaking the fat, and in this process our body is trained to break down fat or utilize the fat to produce ketone bodies. And as the end result, what happens? Body do not make fat, and body learns how to utilize the fat to generate ketone bodies. Obviously, fat breakdowns happen and you lose weight. This is the mechanism behind keto diet and weight loss. Now, normal diet and keto diet are very different, right? The proportion is different. But when you transit from a normal diet to a keto diet, this transition might not be smooth. Your body might undergo some flu-like symptoms, which includes nausea, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, headache, and many things more. And this kind of keto flu is kind of normal because body is undergoing a metabolic transition. Body learns how to use fat as a primary energy source instead of glucose. So in this transition state, these kind of disbalance and these kind of symptoms does appear, and it's nothing to worry about. Keto diet has multiple health benefits, starting from weight loss, increased energy and good cardiovascular health, and then it has been proven to be important for increasing cognitive ability. Lastly, in order to control blood glucose level, keto diet is really important. But there are several myths associated with keto diet. Like keto diet is really dangerous if you have diabetes. Now, it's not really true because the ketogenic diet has actually been validated by American Diabetic Association, and it turns out to be really useful for controlling blood sugar in type 2 diabetes patient. There are other myths like keto diet is bad for heart because it has a lot of fat, so it might cause problem in your cardiovascular health. But it's not true, because if you have a lot of fat in your circulation, it is bad because it might get deposited on the arteries. But under ketogenic state, body knows how to utilize it. So nothing would be actually deposited on the arteries, right? Now, in the keto diet, when we consume more fat, if we can make sure that our fat comes from very healthy sources like salmon, like olive oils, which are enriched in omega-3 fatty acids, then it would be really beneficial for your cardiovascular health. So overall, ketogenesis and ketogenic diet could be proven useful to improve your cardiac health, and it is known to increase good cholesterol or HDL level. Now, I hope that was useful. If you like this video, give it a quick thumbs up. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, if you want to know more about ketogenesis or how our body utilize ketone bodies to generate energy, all the necessary links would be provided in the I button and the description. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Do let me know in the comment whether it was useful or not. Thank you.